I am joined by the CEO of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, for discussion on President Tinubu's economic reform. Dr. Yusuf, thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. It's always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you, Jumake.
Thank you so much. Okay. Now, let's kick off this conversation with the implementation of key economic reforms by the president, which has triggered tremendous pains. Dr. Yusuf, what really is the problem? And will you say the reforms have been badly implemented?
Well, certainly not. The main challenge is that the economy has been badly battered before now. Okay. A lot of things have gone wrong. And it will take some fundamental reforms, some very critical corrective measures to be able to regularize or normalize the state of things. That is why it is, first, it is quite painful, as everybody knows. And from all indications, there are no quick fixes to the challenges. One of the biggest challenges we have has to do with our foreign exchange environment. And foreign exchange is very critical, is central to a whole lot of economic activities. Whether you are talking of trading, you are talking of manufacturing, there are various degrees of import content that you need. And unfortunately, we have an economy that is also highly import dependent. We are still not properly diversified enough so that outside of oil, we could generate foreign exchange from other sources. So because we had a major shortfall in our reserves, the shortfall was far less than what many people thought it was. We knew we had challenges, but nobody knew, or many people did not know that the situation was as bad as it turned out to be. And that is what has created a major problem in the foreign exchange market. Because up until now, CBN intervention in the market averages between $1.5 to $1.3 billion monthly. That was up until even the last dispensation in the central bank. As we speak, I'm not sure we are doing up to $200 million monthly. So you can imagine the huge gap that has been created. So naturally, when you have this kind of huge gap between demand and supply, it will create the kind of crisis we are dealing with. Oh. And the situation has been made worse by the speculative component of the demand. Because not all the pressures that are coming to the foreign exchange market are pressures arising for people that want to engage in any concrete economic activities. Quite a lot of them are people who just want to preserve the value of their naira. Some of them just want to front load, in anticipation that the situation may get worse. Just as if, when you have a vehicle, you already have full tank, for instance, and suddenly you see a queue. Even when you don't immediately need the fuel, there's a tendency for you to go and queue so that you fill up your tank. And possibly even carry jerry cans in anticipation that the scarcity may worsen. So the speculative component had further compounded the problem. And when we are talking about foreign exchange is not something that is easily within our own control. It's not our own currency. It's a foreign currency that the citizens demand or the economic players demand to be able to import one or two things, which is normal in any economy. But if you have this kind of shortfall in the supply, then naturally you have this kind of crisis. So that is why, of course, we have all manner of indicators that are also very negative. The impact of this on our outstanding letters of credit that we have not been able to clear. Letters of credit are things that relate to imports that Nigerians make, that our banks give assurance to the suppliers that once they supply the shipping documents, their foreign exchange, the amount will be paid in foreign exchange. most of those obligations have not been met.
All right.
So there has been a serious breach of trust, even within the international trade ecosystem. So it's a major issue, and I think the immediate challenge is to see how we deal with the issue of supply and how we also moderate the demand. That is the only way out.
All right, so we'll get back to that. But you've said there are no quick fixes, and you've also said it's not like the reforms are bad, but because the economy has been badly battered before now. So is it also that the time wasn't ripe for the reforms?
No. There is no perfect time for this kind of reforms. Because if you are already dealing with a very bad situation, you cannot afford to continue to postpone. Otherwise, the situation will continue to get worse. I mean, it's like somebody who has a major ailment that requires an immediate surgery. You don't say that because of the pains of the surgery, you continue to delay the surgery. That will not make sense. So the earlier we deal with it, the better. But what is important in all of this narrative is that in the process of dealing with it, we need to also immediately deploy mitigating actions. Again, just let's also use the analogy of the surgery. If somebody is going for a surgery, apart from the physician that wants to consult the surgery, you have the anesthesia, who will administer an anesthetist, who will administer the anesthesia so that the pain of the surgery will be minimum. And even after the surgery, there are also pain relievers, all sorts of medications to ensure that the outcome of the surgery is not so bad. So the same thing should apply. These reforms, because of how critical they are and how impactful they are, especially on the vulnerable segments of the society, it makes it necessary and very important and urgent that mitigating measures for the household should quickly be deployed.
All right, but some economists have said Nigerians will begin to see the gains of those reforms by the first quarter of January of 2024. Do you agree?
Well, some of these things, from what we have now seen from experience, is extremely difficult to predict. You know, although economics is a science, but it's a social science. The social aspect of economics is that you are dealing with human behavior, which you cannot accurately predict. Otherwise, some of the things that have happened, even with some of these reforms, many of us did not anticipate that the outcome will be as devastating as it has turned out to be. And that is social science for you, because of the human behavior component of the science. So, to say that the results or the benefits will continue to manifest by the first quarter, maybe, maybe not. Because these things depend on the fundamentals. It depends on how fast we are able to moderate our importation, particularly importation of petroleum products. Because that is a heavy component of our import bill. If we're able to moderate that, either through, the government-owned refineries, which we have been told will be fixed maybe before the end of the year, or the Dangote refinery, or any other sources of energy. If we're able to do that, then we can imagine that the pressure on the demand side will reduce. And on the supply side, if we're also able to improve our oil output, because we are still struggling with this security problem in the Niger Delta. We are still producing 1.1, 1.2, even despite all these interventions of the military and some of these non-state actors. So if we're able to also make some progress, significant progress along that line, then we are likely to see an improvement on the supply side. Then more importantly, is to restore confidence in the foreign exchange market. And by extension, restoring confidence in the economy itself. Because before now, at least, we normally have good inflows from portfolio investors, from foreign direct investors, from the embassies, from oil companies, From diaspora, a lot of inflows coming. From diaspora alone, at least, averagely, we have been making close to 20 billion, according to data. $20 billion inflows annually. You know, we could also do a lot better with respect to foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. But because of the prevailing macroeconomic situation, particularly the fact that the funds of some of the investors are already stuck here. I'm talking of the backlog that the CBN said they wanted to clear. That is not giving a good signal. It's a negative signaling to all these foreign investors. So until we're able to deal with that and clear that substantially, then we can begin to see some restoration of confidence. Because when you have a macroeconomic environment where the indicators are so volatile, it's extremely difficult to attract investors.
So why, in your view, have we not been able to stop the naira from sliding badly against the dollar?
No, it's a question of demand and supply. That is just it. I just told you that in the last few years, you know, the CBN, because the CBN is has been a major supplier, especially to the official window. The CBN has been supplying between 1.3, 1.5, even $2 billion per month. But now, the CBN is struggling to provide maybe $200 or $250 million per month to the market. And when you take that alongside the problem of speculation, of players in the economy and the citizens that are also, you know, a lot of people are nervous. There's a lot of panic buying. Because if you hear that exchange rate was 1,000 today, tomorrow is 1,050, next tomorrow is 1, then you may even begin to see that this may get to 1,500. Let me quickly go and buy, even when you don't immediately need it. So this is what a collapse of confidence, this is the kind of situation it creates. So that is why I said that, and the CBN governor has said it, that they are going to prioritize the clearing of back. If they clear that, they'll be able to make more money available, more foreign exchange intervention to regularize or normalize.
But do we have the resources to defend our currency?
The resources are very lean. Normally, you defend your currency from your reserves. Unfortunately, under the previous dispensation, practically all avenues from which we could mop up resources have been mopped up. You know, we had what we call the currency swap. We had exposure to Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, which is a foreign exchange exposure, which is also, I'm sure, was used to defend the naira. You know, we have, all other exposures. We have all these outstanding obligations that are hanging. So, and we find now that our reserves, which we thought was about $33 billion, has been severely encumbered or have been severely impaired by some of these exposures. So the reserve is not robust enough to be able to defend the currency. That is where the problem is. And a number of options.
Rodney?
One is to see if we have assets that are viable enough into which we can attract equity investors. I'm not talking about borrowing now. Equity investors. Because the Saudi Arabian government did something similar one time. Even as rich as they are. They had some challenges with foreign exchange. And they had this Saudi Aramco, which is their own national oil company. It's the equivalent of our own NNPC. And they sold 5% shares, which gave them, I think, over $20 billion or so. But it was a huge amount that they got from it. And it provided tremendous relief for them. that is selling just a small part of the equity of their own company. So if you also look around, if you look at some of the companies that are viable, now we have talked about, making NNPC a limited liability company. If we're able to progress with that reasonably, if we're able to make the company a lot more credible, if we're able to put value to what NNPC has, if we're able to quote NNPC domestically and internationally, we can sell part of the shares in a way that will not jeopardize our control as a country over that company. 3%, 5%, it could give us something very substantial. We also have the NLNG. This is not about selling assets, because people are very sentimental when you hear that we are selling shares. It is normal. If you have a financial crisis, even at a corporate level, if you have shares you can sell of your company, you can sell it to regularize your cash flow. Because it is often better to invite equity than to go and be borrowing money, especially at an exorbitant rate. So leveraging on whatever assets we have to be able to generate some money, I think it's not a bad idea.
So what other options are available for us?
Well, the other options will be something, maybe the IMF option, although that will be borrowing, but that will not be like borrowing from what you call the commercial creditors. It is much more concessionary, but when you approach the IMF normally give conditions. It can give you conditions that may not be very palatable, either to you or to the citizens. So that is the disadvantage. But the IMF normally provides what you call balance of payment support. And the other options is what I've told you about how we can ramp up, our export production, particularly of crude oil, and how we can also support the non-oil exports economy so that they can also generate some. And of course, because there's also a demand side to this problem, we need to also check the kind of pressure that is coming from the demand side. And the biggest one that we need to deal with is the importation of petroleum products. That is to some extent within our control. And it's something that is feasible in the next maybe 3 to 4 months. We should be able to deal with so that we can reduce the pressure also on the demand side.
All right. So it's been suggested that fuel subsidy is back. Is this an expedient move?
Well, it's not a question of whether it is expedient or not. It's a question of relating to the reality on the ground. Now, fuel price is determined largely, 1, by exchange rates, 2, by international crude oil price. Now, international crude oil price has been going close to 100. Initially driven by the Russia-Ukraine war, which has sustained it at a very high level. Now we have the Palestinian and Israeli war, which seems to be expanding in scope. So these two factors are driving international crude oil price. And unfortunately, because we are also 100% dependent on imports, this will take a toll, or it's already taking a toll, on the import price of these petroleum products. Now, we started with the full deregulation of the sector. That is full removal of the subsidy. But if we have to continue on that trajectory, by now, fuel price will have been getting close to 800 or 900 naira per liter. Politically and socially, that cannot stand. So that, for me, is why I think the administration had decided to peg the price of fuel, because it's bad enough that it's already at 600. So if you now say because of market forces or because of all these variables, we allow these forces to continue to drive the price, it will drive it completely out of reach of men.
But it's not been officially announced. And do you think this administration has the political will to sustain the reforms?
No, of course they have. That is what they have been doing. Politically, it has been very tough. It has been very tough. I mean, look at the kind of pushback, even from the citizens, because of the social outcomes of these reforms. But the reforms are inevitable. But what is important is to give reforms a human face. That is what is most critical. And that is why I said that the administration had decided, and that's why people say that subsidy had returned. Because the administration felt that we cannot just allow this fuel price to continue to increase. Because if you had left it freely to be determined by these variables, I mean, we'll be talking about close to 900 naira per litre by now. And socially and politically, that is very dangerous. So that is why right now you will see that it's only NNPC that is important and making the fuel available. And that is only pragmatic option that we have for now, unless you want to create more social problems for the citizens, which I don't think the administration intends to do.
All right. So the president recently embarked on economic diplomacy. What long-term gains do you think will come to Nigeria from this?
Well, it's like a marketing endeavor, like a marketing trip. You know, showcasing to the world what we have, the potentials we have, our policy reforms and all of that. That was the whole idea, which is not a bad thing. Because, you know, the president sees the opportunity of the meeting in India, and of course, recently the UN General Assembly meeting, at least to meet with investors and so on, to assure them of the investment environment, to assure them of the opportunities that exist. So it's something positive. We have got some pledges, especially from India, of close to $40 billion or so, but those are still pledges. In order to make this thing, you know, to actually, you know, turn out to be reality, we need to do a lot more on the domestic front. Because you are dealing with business people. They can pledge anything, at least during a discussion. But they will still have to do their due diligence. They still have to find out what is on the ground. How stable is the macroeconomic environment? How liquid is your foreign exchange market? What is the state of your security? What is the state of your infrastructure? Well, how consistent is your policy? How is your trade policy? All of those things matter to an investor at the end of the day. So while we are doing that, I mean, that is these road shows and, you know, economic diplomacy. While we are doing that, I think that is a welcome development. But we need to do something on the home front so that we make the environment itself very attractive. Not only for the foreign investors, but also for the domestic investors. Because the domestic investors are as important as the foreign investors. And what is good for the foreign investor is also good for the domestic investors. So that is what I think we should be focused on.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, let's talk about the new CBN governor, Cardoso. I mean, this man comes with tremendous experience in the financial sector. How much confidence do you have in his ability to turn things around?
No, I have a lot of confidence in him. Just as many commentators, I have a lot of confidence. I mean, he has the pedigree, he has the discipline, he has the experience, and he has worked in an institution that places high premium on corporate governance. You know, and during his interaction with the Senate, you remember he stressed the importance of compliance. Because part of the thing that brought us to this point, to this crisis point, was bad corporate governance. You know, a lack of commitment to compliance. That is part of the reason that brought us to this point. By many of our, you know, leaders in some of these key economic institutions. So to that extent, I think I have a lot of you know, hope that he will. But he also needs to also relate, you know, to the realities on the ground. I'm happy he has repeatedly said that he will engage the stakeholders, because that is also very important. Because no matter how much knowledge you think you have about the subject, you still need to engage the stakeholders who are on the ground to be able to shape the direction of your policy. That is one. Secondly, I also need to caution about going full blast on this market forces trail, particularly in the foreign exchange market. We cannot afford, to continue to chase the parallel market, because there are indications of that which I'm seeing. I don't think we can afford to do it. We should define some limits as we pursue this thing. We should define limits as to how far we should go. I know it's a bit, difficult economically, particularly from the point of view of some of these multilateral institutions. But we need to also localize some of these policies. We cannot constantly begin to chase the parallel markets with our official foreign exchange market. Yes, people may argue that it will lead to divergence and all of that. So be it. But we have to be very careful, because that could also, create a lot of perception problem, for our country. Because a few days ago, I was reading that even the official rate has moved to about 870 something, to the dollar. It was bad enough that it was at 770. I know that if we continue to talk about demand and supply fundamentals, it may push it up to that point. But we need to be careful how we submit completely to this issue of market economy. Because even in the advanced economies, when there are peculiar situations, they moderate the influence of these market forces or the concept of free enterprise. I'll give you an example. When there was COVID, America is like the melting pot or the best example of free enterprise economy. I'm talking of the US. When we had COVID, there was an intervention by government to save the airlines from government treasury to the tune of over 50 billion US dollars to save the airlines. That is not consistent with free enterprise economy. But because it was an unusual situation, the banks will not support that kind of thing. The government had to support it. And during the economic recession of 2008, Obama was in government at that time. The auto industry had very serious problems. The banks were not going to support them. Under the administration of Obama, the auto industry was supported to the tune of about 15 billion US dollars. That is completely an aberration in a free market economy. But see what has happened. Although they have since paid back, and they were able to save jobs, they were able to stabilize that sector. Because the auto sector in America is a very strategic sector from the point of view of employment. So the point I'm trying to make is that we need to be careful how we totally submit to this issue of market forces. That is why I like the idea of government intervention in this petroleum product pricing. Because if you are left to market forces, it will have gone completely out of hand.
Dr. Yusuf, some people have suggested that we ban the BDC operators because they've accused them of distorting the foreign exchange market. Do you think this is a desirable step to take?
Well, banning the BDCs, I don't think is desirable, because I know that first they do a lot with respect to attending to retail businesses. In terms of forex at the retail end. Secondly, we have a huge informal economy. And many of these informal traders, because of their style of operation, because of the velocity of transaction in this informal sector space, they don't have the patience of excessive documentation. So a lot of them also use the BDCs. And in any case, the BDCs, by nature, their business is to engage in foreign exchange transactions. It's not even so much the business of the banks. All over the world, if you land in an airport, what you see are BDCs. So they have their role, within, but again, there may be need to sanitize, because many of them are there because of the arbitrage regime that had existed in the foreign exchange market for a very long time. That is why we have so many of them, close to maybe over 5,000 or so. So there will be need to rationalize them, you know, to sanitize the space, streamline their activities, and continue to allow them to be in the business. But I don't think that this idea of, you know, giving them a foreign exchange from the central bank, I don't think that model is a good model.
All right.
There are ways in which they can also source foreign exchange on their own, buy and sell. I think that will help.
All right.